We're going to give guys just a second to get settled and then we'll get started here, please. So if you wouldn't mind finding a spot. Wow, you guys get quiet fast. Holy smokes, that was easy. Well, thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Michael Meeks. I am the president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Cardston. We have been asked to moderate the 2015 PC candidate debate tonight. So I'll be the moderator, and we have Brent Cahoon here as our timer sitting up front. He's got the wonderful little flags of warning and go and stop and all that fun stuff. So tonight we've got our two candidates. We've got Gary Bikman and we've got Brian Brower. Right? Brewer. Gee, I screwed up already. Wonderful. I even asked him and I still screwed it up. So the way tonight's going to go is they will each be given 5 minutes to do a speech so that you guys can get a little bit of background from them, their points of view and all that fun stuff. And Brent will be doing our clock here at 4 minutes. He gets they'll have the green flag. At 4 minutes 30 seconds, they get the amber or the yellow flag, and then at 5 minutes, we do ask that you respect that the flag color comes up, and if you keep talking, I'm going to be the bad guy and I'll just turn off your power and take the mic away. So we're going to have lots of fun. And after that, after they both given their speeches out, we're going to open it up to questions from the floor, and a maximum of 30 seconds for your question, please. If it's directed at them both, they both get 2 minutes to answer that question. If it's directed at one or the other, then the person that the question is directed at will get 2 minutes, and the other person, the incumbent, will get 30 seconds to answer. So pretty straightforward on that. And then at the end of the question period, we will give the wrap up. They'll each get 3 minutes to do a wrap up, and then we'll conclude our evening. So the polling stations are, sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses. We just made a joke about that. All right, so the vote's going to be March 28th. You do need to be a PC member to vote. It's $10 to buy your membership. If you haven't done so already, then either of these guys can help you out. And the 28th will be the vote from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. In Tabor, it'll be at the Parkside Manor. Cardston will be here at the Tanner Senior Center. Raymond will be at the high school. McGrath is the town office. Milk River is the Heritage Hall. And the advance poll will be the 26th at 2 till 7 at the Raymond High School. There'll be a few more forums after tonight. There'll be one tomorrow in Raymond, one on the 24th in Milk River Town Hall, and one on March 25th at the Sterling Community Center. Any questions about that? We can go over that, or we can catch up to you at the end of the day as well. Everybody's ready for this? We're all having fun? You guys look energized already. Okay? So I believe the order of operations tonight, Brian will be starting off. Nope, Gary's starting off. You start off. I screwed up twice. Wonderful. Okay, so we'll start off here with Mr. Bikman, and he's got 5 minutes to address this platform.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. I'm glad that you've turned out. Clearly, it's an indication of your interest in the political process. Before we begin, I do want to take a moment to give you a Kodak moment. If any of you have your cameras with you, your smartphones, you may want to take a picture of this. Why? Anybody want to help him out? It's a picture of a politician with his hands in his own pocket. I thought that you might appreciate knowing what a conversation that I had recently with Stephen Mandel, our health minister. He said to me in response to something that I had talked to him about, and I'll tell you what I asked him, but this was his response. Bikman, you're a pain in the... And I mean that in a nice way. And what I'd asked him about, what I said to him was, Stephen, give them their hospital. Be a mensch. Mensch is a Yiddish word that he understands, and it means be a man of integrity. Do the right thing. You know, Cardston's a great community with a long, rich history that began with courageous pioneers. On June 3, 1887, the final day of the trek, Charles Oricard told the group, we'll be home tonight. Cardston feels like home today, because you have the same spirit of perseverance and commitment. Your friendliness and neighborly spirit make Cardston a great place to live and raise a family. Your caring and sharing is an essential part of your individual and collective identity, and you raise your children to be the same kind of people. I know there's a fundraiser going on right now, for instance, to help the Shipley family through their trials. I've made my own little contribution and spoken about them with Health Minister Mandel. He's sympathetic to their plight and has instructed his staff to do everything they can to help. Cardston is known for the quality of its education provided here. I don't think there's another school in Alberta whose students earn more scholarships and awards per capita than Cardston High School. And how about those Cougars? Go Cougars. Mayor Cronin and your town council are visionary and committed to providing you the best quality of life possible in the most cost-effective way, and here she is. Reeve Lacey and the county are doing the same thing for the surrounding area. Councillor Bester and I have been working on getting Highway 505 upgraded. It's going to happen this year. I continue to advocate for the long-promised, seriously overdue, and desperately needed hospital, as I just referenced in my comments from Minister Mandel. I'm encouraged by Dr. Starkey's thorough rural health review. AHS is changing, and the announcement came today. If you want to read about it in your paper or online, I've posted something as well. So what should I be telling you tonight? How hard I've worked to represent you and advocate for your concerns and causes? I have. That our party leader, Premier Jim Prentice, likes me and the job I'm doing? He does. That he's asked you to re-elect me? He has. Should we list all the grants, funding, and new schools announced for our constituency? There have been a lot. An insider told me that since I've been your MLA, we've been more successful gaining support here in our riding than in a 3-year period than any other of the MLAs over the past 20 years. Let's just say I've worked hard to understand your needs and concerns. I've developed strong relationships, friendships even, with ministers and their assistants. When I call, they answer. When I explain your issues, they respond in a timely, favorable, and helpful way, more often than not. Education ministers, Johnson and Dirks, have been very supportive. Ken Sommerfeld and his staff do a great job working with them. The evidence speaks for itself, and Minister Dirks will be visiting with us in McGrath this Saturday. Property rights. Bills 50 and 19 have been repealed. The Premier and I met at his home before Christmas and discussed the missing essential expropriation clauses in ALSA Bill 36. He gets it, and I believe we're going to have some good news soon. We also talked about our government spending problems, and I shared what you've told me. Cut at the top, eliminate the layer of lard, but don't cut the front lines like Ralph did. And address the infrastructure deficit. Municipal governments need that support. I explained that when revenues drop, businesses cut at the top, but they maintain their frontline capabilities. Lower royalty revenues certainly don't mean that there'll be fewer students and less medical and health issues. Knowing cuts would be needed, I suggested that MLAs should lead by example, and he agreed. I recommended a 10% cut in our pay. He only gave us a 5% cut, but on top of the 8% cut I voluntarily took 2.5 years ago, that means that I'm already 13% lower. During the past 3 years, our constituency has helped over 900 people. We've done a lot for a lot of people, and it's our pleasure to do it. Thanks for listening tonight, and I look forward to the questions that we'll be discussing.
Just like to start out with thanking everybody for coming tonight. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and listen. I'd like to introduce my wife, Deb. Appreciate all the help and support she's given me over the days traveling. Thanks, Deb. Start out with a little bit about myself. I'm 51 years old. Deb and I have been married for almost 30 years. Born and raised south of Grassy Lake in a third-generation farm. My grandfather homesteaded there in 1907. I currently farm and ranch with my brother and father. We run an irrigation farm and a cow-calf operation. Prior to getting involved in the MD Council, I was involved in a couple associations, Badland Grazing Reserve, which is a grazing reserve out by Hayes, and also the Alberta Corn Marketing Agency. Growing up, 4-H was always a big part of our family. I was in 4-H for a number of years, as were my children, and they were good years. I appreciated the 4-H program. In 1998, I was elected to the MD Tabor Council, representing Division 3, which is the Grassy Lake area. Since that time, I've sat in numerous boards. Past chair of the Tabor District Housing. Tabor District Housing is our local low-income and senior housing. And one of the proudest accomplishments of mine was we added on to one of our senior centers and put an atrium over there. and it improved the quality of life for the seniors significantly. Past chairman of the Ag Service Board. As chairman of the Ag Service Board, I was also past vice chairman of the South Zone rep for the Provincial Ag Service Board Committee. I've sat in 12 years as Subdivision and Development Authority. I currently sit on the appeal boards for that. Recreation boards, I've sat in recreation boards in Tabor and Grassy Lake. Highway 3 Water Commission. This is a water commission line that we put in from Bow Island to Grassy Lake. So 3 municipalities, the town of Bow Island, 40 Mile, and the MD of Tabor, and we put a water line serving 3 communities there. Past chair of the Highway 3 Economic Development Committee. What that is a committee with mayors and Reeves that starts out in Crow's Nest Pass to Milk River, and we're trying to get Highway 3 twinned as our main goal. We're trying to prioritize where do we start, where do we finish. We've come up with the conclusion that we should probably be starting in the Crow's Nest Pass. Tabor and District Community Adult Learning, I'm currently a member of. Currently chair of the South Region Drainage Study. This is a study that we started, actually, Bryce, in your time with Minister Rob Renner. We were asked to sit down with the irrigation districts after a couple years of high rainfall. There was a lot of conflict between municipalities and irrigation districts with water flooding out roads and irrigation districts. So we sat down, formed a committee and did a study, and it actually was just released here a couple months ago. In 2013, I was appointed to the Alberta Irrigation Council. Irrigation is something that goes back a long way in my family. And I've been Reeve with the MD of Tabor for the past 4 years. So why am I running for the PC candidate? I've been involved in the PC party at various levels since the mid-80s. Deb and I attended our first PC AGM in Edmonton in 1988, and I remember that because Deb was very pregnant with her first son. So, and I'll be the first to admit that there's been some frustration in this party over the last few years. But I'm not one to turn and run. If there's a problem, I'd rather help stay and solve the problems that we have. So that's why I'm here today. We need to improve the efficiency and accountability in our government. Provincial budgets can't be triggered to energy prices. Seniors, we need to be able to let them age with dignity and give them the funds that are needed. Ag processing agriculture. Canada will be one of the 6 countries that will be exporting food here quickly. We need to make sure that our infrastructure is there to enable us to do this. Protecting children. We need to protect children that can't protect themselves. The MD of Tabor has one of the lowest mill rates within the province. The MD of Tabor was recently placed 9th out of 181 municipalities for sustainable spending. This is a report that was done by the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. This is what I'm proud of as a municipal council, and this is what I would take to Edmonton for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian and Gary. So what we'll do now, we're going to open up to the floor. We're going to have you guys ask your questions. Again, they can be directed at both candidates, or they can be directed at one or the other. So if you guys want to stand and ask your question, you're welcome to do that. Again, we're going to limit your question to 30 seconds in length, and then we'll give them their time to answer, or you can come up here to the mic and you can ask it up here. Can everybody hear okay before we get going too far? Volume's good, everybody in, okay? Everybody's happy?
Mine in 30 seconds.
Yeah, so 30 seconds on the question, and again, they'll get 2 minutes to answer their the question. If it's directed at both, they both get 2 minutes. If it's directed at one, the person it's directed to will get 2 minutes, and the person that's going to be able to rebuttal their answer will be given 30 seconds. Mayor.
My question would be addressed to Brian. Brian, you're new in this type of election at the provincial level, and I would like to know, how do you feel you will be able to impact policies or decision-making at the provincial level?
Thanks for that. I appreciate it. MD of Tabor has an $18 million budget. So as far as budgeting and working with money, it's something that we do on the municipal level. Over the past few years, I've developed a really good relationship with a lot of the ministers. I've been at Rural Caucus twice, and introducing concerns. One is bridge funding. Met with Minister Mandel on various issues, one of them being the ambulance service. Met with Minister McQueen when she was environment on some concerns. So I have developed a good relationship with a lot of the ministers already. I know them on a first name basis, certainly through their RA, MD&C boards and other committees that I've worked on with them has been good. Ag Minister through Alberta Irrigation Council, I've worked with him on that. So I've worked with a lot of ministers already.
Thank you.
There's quite a learning curve to this job, and I can tell you from personal experience, and I'm sure that other MLAs would back me up on this. We have some prior MLAs here, that getting ramped up takes some time, and to build the relationships that you need takes time. It helps, obviously, to have had some relationships prior, but you need to know how to approach them and to build the bridges of trust, and I've already done that. You've made an investment in me already, and you ought to amortize it.
Gentleman back here in the back row, second row.
I'd like to ask Mr. Bikman, the last election, I voted for the Wild Rose. Now, I presume his speech here tonight is to say we give the Wild Rose. Now, to me, he should be penalized. Like, we voted for him as a Wild Rose, not as a conservative. And what gives him a right to now just walk across the floor and says he's a conservative representative? He's not representing me, because I didn't vote for him. So how does that work? I think that you guys that get in office, you should have to give a letter of credit for probably $75,000 minimum.
Okay,
That you would stay till the end of your term.
Mr. Bikman?
There were 600 Wild Rose members about last year, or in the last election in 2012. I got about 6,200 people that voted for me. Some of the people that voted for me had PC membership cards. I became the MLA of everybody in the riding, not just the people that voted for me. Nobody that ever called me ever heard the question, well, I'm not sure I'm going to take time to help you because you didn't vote for me. So I still represent everybody in this constituency, and I've worked really hard. And I ran on a platform that I believed in. I ran on a platform that the PC party once stood for and had drifted away from. And we were together in fighting for that, and we succeeded. We were a very effective opposition. Now I'm a PC again, back where I was before. And if you've always been a Wild Roser, then I'm not going to, if you tell me you've always been a Wild Roser, I'm not going to buy a used car from you. Because I know you weren't always a Wild Roser.
No, I wasn't. The first time I voted for it.
Well, I've got the floor.
That's so wrong. You guys just decided to walk the floor.
Well, I realize that, and I can appreciate how disappointed.
And I mean, all of you
Can
do
you
it. You're
finish?
You're
Please?
not by
Okay.
yourself.
Well, I appreciate how hard that was for many people who feel the same way. But I believe in principles as opposed to partisanship. The principles were fiscal accountability, transparency, smaller government. Those are the same principles that Premier Prentice believes in, and I'm grateful to be part of his team. And I'll continue to work hard to make sure that I represent those interests, because I know that those are the same interests that all of you have. And I guess I should take it as a compliment that you feel so strongly about this. If I hadn't been effective, you probably would have been glad to see me go.
One of the concerns that I've heard over the time is that they've asked for a fair and open process. And that's what you have here today. You have your choice as to who you would like to see represent you. You have an option now moving forward as to who you'd like to see.
Mr. Fox?
Yeah, being Native American and from this, there's a major issue recently with a lot of deaths with people who are dying from the Oxy-80 epidemic. It's a big concern with what I do in my job every day, and I want to find out from asking both of you what you would do if you were elected as our MLA for our area for that issue, because the blood reserve is part of your riding.
Brian?
I certainly recognize that there's a federal issue here also that's involved. But we do need to get some provincial support down there, and we need to find out where this issue is coming from. We need to sit down and get some extra help down there, because what's happening now is shameful. How do we control this? How do we curb this? We need to talk to our law enforcement, and we got to get on top of this, because we can't let this go on any longer.
I'll take Brian's extra time. We can really get into this deeper. Dr. Fox, I appreciate your concern, and you and I have talked about this along with your father. We met in our constituency office as well. And we put together a pilot program that I'm still advocating for. I met with the health minister, as you know, as well as the Associate Minister of Aboriginal Affairs. And we haven't let this drop. You and I discussed very recently some other ideas about ways to move this forward. It's a tragedy. We've got the highest level of abuse, I think, in Canada, if not North America, right here just a few miles away from us. And you deal with those people on a regular basis. They're your people. And you're doing what you can, and you're working very hard and have some good ideas about how to help them. And I endorse those ideas, and I'll continue to advocate for them just as fiercely as I always have. I am your MLA, and I am working on that right now.
Anybody else? More questions? We've got plenty of time, so the time is yours. You guys came out, so we are now just in the question and answer phase. Okay, we'll go back here if nobody else.
Are any of you people running prepared to do anything about the exorbitant prices we have that dentists are charging the people? You know, it's got totally out of hand, and there's a lot of families that just can't afford it, and that's wrong.
So just to...
You guys are offering to take a 5% wage cut. Well, that's a big deal. You just got a 25% raise. But the people out there that can't afford that, you give them the answer.
So just to clarify your question is regards to dental costs in the province?
Yes.
Okay.
Dental or debt?
Dental.
You've raised a serious issue, and I'm grateful for the question. And I've talked to some other dentists. Some retired dentists are quite shocked at what's been happening, and they're very concerned. But I also have a lot of confidence in the dentists that we do have. Now, I know that a lot of people wait for doctors, but you don't have to wait for a dentist, because there are a lot of dentists out there to serve us. And some may charge more than others. I know there's a minimum fee that they are required to charge, but I don't think any dentist would turn somebody that was sincerely needy away. But we'll look into this. I'll talk to the health minister about it. It's a concern that has been raised, and so you're echoing some of the thoughts of other people. I appreciate you bringing it to our attention and reminding me. Thanks.
Thank you for bringing up this issue, and it is a huge concern. There almost seems to be a two-tiered system when it comes to dental on it. It is necessary, a lot of it, in order to do it, so it definitely needs to be addressed further.
Dr. Strang?
I just want to make a slight correction, Mr. Bikman. It is illegal to have minimum charges. That's price fixing.
Okay? Well, it's a suggested minimum then.
Anything else from the floor tonight? Mayor Cronin?
I would like to address this to Gary maybe. There is an MGA review right now, and I would like to know what is your position regarding recognizing municipalities having their own autonomy in government?
Are you talking about the charters that the two big cities are being considered for?
That and possibly more independence at the local level.
Well, there are a number of us in caucus who feel that that is something that needs to be looked at, that we ought to be treating municipal levels of government with the same respect that the provinces have in terms of some of the powers and authorities. I know that a lot of responsibilities have been downloaded onto MDs in counties and communities that were once paid for by the government. I know there have been cutbacks in infrastructure grants and other programs like that, and the funding hasn't been constant and level. We're going to continue to advocate for that. That's something that's important. I believe the Premier gets it. I believe we're going to see us moving in that direction. He's endorsed that principle, that concept in principle, and I believe that we will move in that direction. Certainly the issues that municipalities face, especially rural municipalities, are different from what works in Calgary and Edmonton. And the Premier has demonstrated a willingness, or actually an awareness, and he's acknowledged this by creating a Calgary caucus, an Edmonton caucus, and a rural caucus. So the Calgary MLAs are part of that caucus. The rural MLAs are together part of a rural caucus. And I we've got a release of a newsletter, and I've got a copy of it here with some of the things from our rural caucus that you may find interesting, and I made some extra copies here.
Thank you.
As you're well aware, really municipalities are a creature of the province. We are governed through the MGA and the provincial government. So that's the structure of the government. That's the way it's done. Certainly it would be nice to have some of our own autonomy, but in a way we got to be careful what we ask for too. It's nice to have the provincial backing on a lot of this stuff.
Mr. Jacobs?
Thank you. My question's for Mr. Brewin. I've done a little bit of visiting with people the last few weeks on this process, and there's an issue out there with the Wild Rose Alliance members crossing the floor to another party. So my question to you, Brian, is how would you react to that if you became frustrated with the PCs or frustrated with government? What would your position be?
Actually, Royce, Howard, as I mentioned earlier, I don't believe in turning and running. I believe if I have an issue or a problem that I stand up and I try to fix it within. Maybe I'm overcommitted sometimes, but I feel that you can work within to try to solve the problems. I realize there's problems with this party and that we need to work on it, but I believe we can work within this party. I believe we've got a leader now that is listening, wanting some change, and I think it's an opportune time for us to make some changes.
Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. And sometimes somebody's got to do the dirty work. And I believe that my faithful or my loyal opponent here, a good person, would be the first to admit that if Alison Redford were still a premier, he wouldn't be here. And I happen to know that you once told me that if you hadn't been ousted as the candidate and had won the last election, that you probably would have crossed because you couldn't work for Alison Redford.
You were mentioning earlier about the government announcing a new medical changes. We've made many changes over the past. Wait lists have not changed. There's still lots of waste in the medical system. I worked for the Foothills Hospital for 20 years, and the things that I saw there were unbelievable. If you want to save money, start tightening up on what departments do. I saw departments buying equipment just to use up their budget at the end of the year, and then storing it until it was written off, and then buying new equipment. That's got to stop.
Are we directing at Brian or Gary for this, or both?
Either one.
Either one? So we'll open it to both you guys, 2 minutes?
I guess I'll first. Another good question, highlighting something that plagues and bothers us all. We see waste, and the Premier sees that waste. And in a conversation that I had with him at his home before Christmas, he said that at one time he felt embarrassed to admit that he was from Alberta because of the waste that he saw. And one of the things that really gets his blood boiling, he said, was the waste in AHS, the way it had been structured. And he commissioned, through Minister Mandel, had Dr. Starkey traveling around, and many people have had a chance in rural Alberta, communities under 10,000 people, have had a chance to weigh in on some of those issues, and that report was released today. And so there's some reference to it in the material that I have that I think you'll find interesting. They've correctly identified that it's been a myth to suggest that rural hospitals are inefficient, that they're a drain on resources, when in fact properly functioning and properly supported, they'll save us money. And we know that the Premier has moved to remove some of the acute care beds that are being used, the use of the acute care beds, by long-term patients. And that's going to help tremendously. And there's some also information about that from Minister Johnson, the seniors minister. Good point, and we're working on it. We are going to solve these problems.
Thanks for the question. You're 100% right. There is waste in bureaucracy, in upper bureaucracy. We have to be careful to how we do it. We don't want to lose our frontline workers. We need to be careful. We need to examine how this is done. We don't want to lose our teachers. We don't want to lose our nurses. We do need to make some cuts. One of the announcements in the Starkey report is to reestablish some local health service districts, which I think will help. I don't think it was the right move to move everything up to Edmonton. We lost that local voice. We lost that local person that understood what was important to our rural communities. We are different in rural than we are in urban. We need to make sure that that's understood. We need somebody closer to be watching exactly how spending's done.
Sir?
Reeve, it was mentioned that you're making some cuts at the top. I'd like to know if you've got any specific cuts that you're going to make to counteract the revenue that's not there anymore. I'd like to ask, have an answer from both of you.
Sure. Perfect.
How is this going to be done?
Okay, well, Brian, you can answer this one first. Perfect, thanks.
And I'll be honest with you, that's a hard one to answer, not being involved in the talks that are going on there. That's my feelings, is that the cuts need to be made in the top, but not being privy to the discussion that's going on there, it's probably not fair for me to give you an answer on that.
What would you recommend?
I would recommend some of the higher bureaucracy being changed. I think we can do more with less on the top end. We've got people that are drawing in $500,000 salaries, and them are the ones that probably should be doing some cuts or some changes being made at the top end. We could hire 6 nurses for the salaries of some of these.
There is a layer of lard. I've suggested that we dedicate a budget line item of $1 billion to pay off some of those people and get them out of the way. They're morale destructive. There are 7 layers of management within some departments, in AHS for example, and that's ludicrous. There's a ratio of 4.5 workers to 1 in the public service, and that's ludicrous. There's no private industry, no private business that needs 1 supervisor for every 4.5 employees. When I talked with the minister, or with the premier rather, about this and suggested that we do cut at the top, not the front lines, which he is not going to do. He's not going to cut the front lines. We're not going to see a reduction in the service capacity that currently exists. I think it will be enhanced. We've already put a freeze on new hires on anything except essential areas, essential services. We've cut back on unnecessary travel, unnecessary training, and we are going to allow attrition to take care of some of this. There will be some positive steps taken, but it'll be in a cadenced and humane way. We can't just simply slash and burn. That's not going to be fair to the people or their families that are affected. So it'll be cadenced, and it will be done in a proper way. But it's going to take 10 years to get us to where we need to be. You can't change overnight. This is like changing the direction of a battleship, not a speedboat. You got to do course corrections by degree so that over time, just a small correction after a while, get you moving in the direction that you need to be. The Premier's very aware of this. He wants people like me to be part of his system because I understand systems. I've had training in systems. You can do all the consulting you want, but at the end of the day, you talk to the frontline people, ask them where the problems are, and you put systems in place that will lead you to where you want to go. You can't keep doing the same things and expect different results.
We got a question from Mayor Cronin, and then we'll get Dave here next.
The question I have is to either of you. It's regarding the state of the hospital right now. We have a plan in place, more or less, where we had the infrastructure needs that have been assessed. We have the need of the communities that have been assessed, and the reports are now out. The next step before we can move with the possibility of receiving funding is to have a business case brought together. At this time, because of funding cuts, I feel we again once more put on the back burner. How will you help us?
Well, I've already raised it numerous times, and I'll continue to battle for it. It's been due, as you and I know, it's been the top priority of our government for the past 10 years at least. We're long overdue a complete rebuild of that facility. We need a new hospital. It needs to have expanded capacity. We need input, and our government needs input, and it's been provided. And you can study and discuss and debate these kinds of things forever. It needs to happen. It needs to happen right away. People aren't able to get the service and the care that they need. If it wasn't for the incredible doctors and nurses that we do have, we'd be in a horrible situation. But they're not working under ideal conditions. We're grateful to have a hospital, but it's our turn to have the hospital that this town and this area deserves. We need that hospital. People depend on it. Lives depend on it. We need to give good care to the most vulnerable people in our community, which is seniors and children. And we're not able to do it to the degree that we would be able to if we had a new and proper hospital. So that message has been received. It'll continue to be delivered by me because I'm your MLA.
I would have been disappointed if you didn't bring up this question. I will assure you, I heard you when we talked to the town council. I can also say that the county council had the exact same problem. The hospital is a #1 priority down here. And that's the importance of making sure that you have a strong MLA that is fighting for you in Edmonton to make sure that message gets through. We do need to try to get it, and it is coming up into hard times, so we need to make sure that we get together and try to get this funding.
We just have one in the way. Mr. Edmonds, right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
One thing that really bugs me is that the government signs contracts with executives with very large separation fees. That's got to stop. When I worked in the hospital system, they never balanced the budget. They always went over. And when they retired, they got this fantastic bonus and a golden handshake. As a pensioner, I don't get any of that. I'm lucky if I get a $20 increase on my pension. And that's supposedly the cost of living, and that doesn't cover it.
$1.47 a month.
Yeah.
Mr. Edmonds, was that directed at one or both? Or both? Okay.
Bugs me too. Unfortunately, we live in the age of union negotiations, and we have to make sure that we are respectful of the union regulations and negotiations that have been done on this, and the commitments that were made prior to it. We certainly can't start backing down on commitments that were made, but we do need to start watching our contracts as they're being drafted, made up, to make sure that this is under control.
Excellent question. It comes up in every conversation that we have, especially when we get together as a group. It came up when we were going around, when I was doing the budget presentations a couple of weeks ago. I've advocated for pay, perks, and parachutes that are competitive in the free market. There's no way that I should lose an employee to any level of government because they can afford to offer him a better deal than I can. And I have a friend right now, a young friend, who's a top-notch heavy-duty mechanic, and he's leaving a very, very good job in private industry to go to work for a level of government because he'll be able to get more sick days and more of these, all the other things, better pay and better perks, that kind of stuff. And that's wrong. It's absolutely wrong because he's being paid with our tax dollars, my tax dollars, his employer's tax dollars. Government doesn't have any money of its own, does it? All it's got is money for me and you. Now, there's a little chart on page 116 in the book called Free to Choose by Milton and Rose Friedman. I donated a copy to your library, so if you want to read it, you can see it. But that chart talks about the utility of money. The most efficient use of money in the whole economy is when somebody's spending their own money on themselves. They'll negotiate tough, they'll get the best value, and they'll stay within budget because they got to pay for it. The second is when they use their money on somebody else. So if I'm spending my money on you, I might think I know what kind of gift you'd like, but I got a budget of 50 bucks. If you don't like it, it's the thought that counts. You can always exchange it. The third most efficient is when I'm spending somebody else's money on me, and I don't care how much it costs. I want it right now. The least efficient is when somebody else is spending somebody else's money on somebody else. Who does that describe? The government. So we've got to get that under control, and it describes the bureaucracy, and that's got to stop, and I'm going to help it happen.
Gentleman in the blue sweater here.
You mentioned the hospital, and I don't understand that. We have a pretty nice hospital here. Would it not be better to upgrade it rather than build a new hospital? Is that being cost effective to build a new hospital?
Are we opening this to
Yes,
both?
both.
Perfect.
Sometimes it's a question of old wine in new bottles or new wine in old bottles. We've got an old bottle and it's dysfunctional and it's in run-down condition. And there are aspects of that hospital that do not meet code and that are inadequate. Now, they do a marvelous job with what they've got. And we're a community that practices, use it up and wear it out. We don't waste. We turn out the lights and we get the last drop out of the tube of toothpaste and everything else. We've got the last drop out of that tube of toothpaste. It's time. It's past time. And I'm so grateful to doctors and nurses that are as committed as they are and as professional as they are that have been able to continue to work in that facility. It's almost third world.
Thank you for the question, and that's something that always needs to be looked at. I will be honest with you, the recommendation though from your county council and from your town council is that it should be replaced, and I respect the opinions of these people. But obviously before anything is done, you need to do a review and make sure that it is the best cost or the best use of our taxpayer money.
Did I see a question in the front row here?
Yes. In Europe, England, those countries, they don't tear down old buildings, they renovate them and fix them. They've wanted to tear down the Foothills Hospital, which I worked in for a long time. Why can't we do the same thing as they do in Europe? Update. The building's there, it's well built.
We're opening this to both candidates? Okay.
Again, I guess a guy needs to look into it and see what the best cost alternative is. Sometimes it is more cost efficient to start over than it is to try to rebuild.
We'll let him finish and then we'll give you a question.
Actually, I'm going to let Maggie answer that question.
Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to do.
I know. You should be the MLA.
Down pretty quick.
Hey, Dave, you'd make a good MLA spouse.
To answer the question is as follows. The need assessment for new infrastructure has been done a long time ago in this town. So AHS knows exactly what the state of the hospital is. And infrastructure also know exactly, Alberta infrastructure also exactly know what the gaps are with that hospital. So there is upgrade possible, or there is continuous spending money on an old structure that still doesn't meet the codes, or rebuild according to the new codes. So that is where the business case comes into action. Until we have that business case brought forward, we will not know if it is an upgrade we're going to have, or if it's a new hospital we're going to have. But right now, everything points towards a new hospital. But as you know, you cannot do upgrade without money.
Can't build a new hospital without money either. You're right,
So
it's a budget
that's the way
issue.
it goes.
Thanks for that, Maggie. Let me just add that there's an issue of sunk cost. When you've sunk so much money into something and you continue to sink the money into it, you think, well, just one more dollar, just one more investment is going to finally make it work. I had a truck like that once, and we finally just had to scrap it, take our lumps when we traded it in for far less than we had put back into it to try and make it run efficiently. We had to buy a new truck, and it saved us money in the long run. That's what will happen here.
We'll just go back here. She hasn't asked a question yet, and we'll catch you in just a second.
Hey, my question is for Brian. Hi, Brian. Hey, I just want to know, are you a supporter, were you a supporter of Allison? And if you weren't, what did you do to help get rid of her?
That's my Bryce question.
I was a supporter of the PC party.
Okay.
I was frustrated, I'll be the first. I probably backed off in some of the things I was doing with the PC party at the time, but I never did lose my loyalty. Just because you have some issues doesn't mean you should run away from the problem. Allison was turned over within the party. It's something that was done within the party, and we made some changes because of it. One of the things was the way that we now choose the premier rather than the third place ballots, and I think that's a positive change that has been made to our party. I'll be the first to admit we have problems, but again, I'd rather stand up and try to fix the problems that we have within than to think that we can move somewhere else and they're going to go away.
You're welcome.
We just got the gentleman here in the blue, and then we'll get to you again, Royce.
I don't understand. I mean, if you're going to build a new hospital, what are you building it for? My wife has to go to Calgary to get services. Sometimes we have to go to Lethbridge. So what's a new hospital going to do to improve the services? Because the way the government will work on the Alberta health system is that the big hospitals, everything is located there. So what's the point of another hospital?
We're opening this to
Yes,
both?
both.
Perfect.
Fair question. Why are we building these big, massive hospitals and requiring people to move? Why did the people in Milk River no longer have acute care beds? Why has it been so hard for them to recruit doctors and retain doctors? Why can't we have an ARP with the doctors that have finally been found for that hospital work in concert, and the clinic in Milk River work in concert with the ones in Tabor, the clinic in Tabor? It makes sense. It makes dollars and cents. There is a role to be played for rural hospitals, and recent studies, when we've looked deeper and dug deeper, we've discovered that it's been a false model to think that you have to build these big palaces. We have a hospital in Calgary. That new hospital on the southeast end of Calgary was budgeted for $500 million. It's going to probably end up costing close to $2 billion. We need people like me that have business sense and have spent my own money on things to take that attitude into the bureaucracy and get that attitude changed. Our government doesn't believe in that, but it's happened. The bureaucracy sometimes is like the tail wagging the dog. That's got to be brought under control. We need systems to do that. The Premier, our Premier has brought in a management team to oversee rather, the negotiations with the public service. And that's going to change. And that is what needs to happen, and it will happen.
Thanks for that question. So do we pack up and move everything to the cities? We need to support our small communities. It's important that our small communities have similar services that we do in elsewhere. Yes, it's a struggle for some of our small communities, but it doesn't mean that our healthcare, that our hospitals, that our schools all have to be moved to the larger centers. We need to make sure that our small communities survive. I'm from a small community. I understand the need for that. Maybe we can make changes. Why can't we be doing more operations in our small hospitals? Why can't we be bringing doctors from other areas to be doing operations right here? People are willing to drive to get an operation done. Why can't we be looking at alternative ways there rather than shutting everything down? Don't give up on our small communities. We need hospitals, we need schools, and we need services just like the large cities do.
I believe Royce had a question. And
well, my question is going to be in a different venue. I want to make sure you get through with the hospital issue before I change the subject. So if someone else has got a hospital question, go ahead. Just change the subject.
Are we good with healthcare questions? Any more healthcare questions on the floor? We're ready to move on, shift gears. Okay, we'll go to Bruce.
Thank you. So on the news today, we had several stories from the Chamber about royalties. And they were quoting statistics that gave Norway $150 billion savings because they don't spend any of their royalty revenue on government operational or deficit or anything. Then they compared Alaska. So Alberta has a Heritage Trust Fund, which hasn't grown much in the last 20 years. So I was just wondering what both candidates' response would be on this issue of royalties versus spending for government, running government, or saving for future generations.
Thanks, Bryce. And there needs to be a balance, is what it amounts to. I don't think you spend everything every year that you make. There needs to be some contingency funds put away so when the times are bad that we can draw from it. At the same time, we've got infrastructure that we want to build. So what we need to do is balance it. We don't need to take everything out. We need to start balancing our budget. We need to start setting realistic goals where oil prices might be so we can meet these concerns. So a balanced approach. And you did it when you were in there. You had the contingency fund that you started there. Unfortunately, it never did carry on. I believe it's at $8 billion. And it's something that we're going to be able to use now to help us get out of our situation a little bit. But it should be a lot more.
Good question, Bryce, and I'm glad it came up. I've done a little research on this. I talked about this as we traveled around doing the 5 meetings about the budget and getting feedback from people about the budget. If the original investment that Peter Leahy, that visionary premier, had put into that Heritage Savings Trust Fund, if that money had been left there and the interest allowed to accumulate, my researcher told me that it would be worth $230 billion today, 230 billion bucks. Now, if tough times hit and we had to say take 5% of the interest, last year the fund earned 16 billion or 16%. It's not a bad return. I want that guy managing my RRSPs. Rob, thanks. Rob's going to take credit for that. We could take half of that, and that would be $11.5 billion. And we wouldn't care what was happening with royalties. It would wean us completely off of dependence on that royalty roller coaster. We've got to get there. This premier, our premier, this leader gets it. He understands it completely, and he's going to wean us from it. A couple interesting facts. The next closest province to us in terms of tax rate, lower tax rate, we collect $11 billion less in taxes, not counting royalties. So we've relied on royalties. But the other provinces that are providing goods and services are charging $11 billion more, the next one closest to us. The Norwegian fund, Norway has a 25% sales tax. And they have a 48% marginal a tax rate on income tax. We don't want to go there. We don't have to go there. The best time to have done what was needed was 30 years ago. The next best time is right now. We got the Premier to do it, and you've got an MLA that's going to help them.
I believe I saw a question from the back from Graham.
In 2006, a waste reduction plan was released by the province. They aim for an 80% reduction of waste going to landfills in 20 years. So that'd be 2026. We're halfway there now, about. It's an ambitious goal. In your opinion, is this achievable? Is it still a provincial priority? And how will you help our rural communities reduce waste by 8%?
You're directing this to both?
Yep.
Perfect.
Well, this has been a big issue in the Chief Mountain Waste Authority area because of the damage that was done through hail and the other storms that have happened. And there was much more tonnage delivered than was authorized. And so that ended up having to be hauled to Lethbridge and to the Crow's Nest Pass, and at a cost of about $85,000. I lobbied the minister to help fund a study as to what could be done with our current landfill site, and a couple $100,000 was spent on analyzing the waste, and there's an awful lot that needs to be done, but that'll happen through education. Because we're delivering a lot more stuff to our landfills than need to be there. And we could be recycling a lot of things. We should be composting. I can't remember the exact figures, but it's an amazing percentage of the matter that goes into that landfill that could be composted. So there are things that can be done. It's an ambitious goal. It needs to happen, but we have to have the will to make it happen. So to quote our Premier incorrectly, we need to look in the mirror, right? Because we're the ones that are generating what's going in there. And so we've got to address that in the proper way. We can do it.
Thanks for that question. Waste is going to be a huge problem. I know a lot of the landfill sites, certainly around our area, are going to end in the next 5 to 10 years. And we keep continually adding to it without any thought of what we're going to do next. There's a couple programs that are actually going on. SAWAB has a waste to energy program that's going on, and they're in about their 5th year of that. They've got some interesting initiatives that are coming forward on that, and that is to actually burn the waste and produce energy out of it. So that's one alternative. The other alternative is more recycling, and yet a lot of the communities that try to do this are met with reluctance, not trying to do it, or not wanting to do it. So again, it has to be a willingness to do it to begin with, but it's something we have to look at moving into the forward into the future.
Mayor Cronin?
My question is on finances for small municipalities regarding the MSI.
Sorry, what MSI is?
Municipality Sustainability Initiative.
Okay.
That was a program that was started quite a while ago, about 10 years ago, I believe. And there is 2 components to that program. One that is operational, one that is capital. As you know, operational should come out in about 2 years, 2017.
So just summation of your, okay, that's time. We gotta follow the rules, so everybody's gotta be the same. What's your question?
How would you help us keep the MSI long-term and short-term?
And this is for both?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Whichever one wants to jump up first.
Okay. You answered second. That doesn't matter. We won't stand on that. Excellent question. A question that every mayor and Reeve, big or small, is concerned about. is to make sure that you know what funding is going to come. You don't have to wait until the budget is finally approved in April or May to know how much money you're going to be able to get. We need level funding. I've advocated for level funding. I'll continue to advocate for level funding. You need certainty. You need predictability. You need to know what you're going to get. And there is a formula that could be followed, and that we've advocated for a number of years now, that the government, I'm sure, will look at, and I'm sure will be considered, because the Premier gets it. He understands that you can't run your operation if you're not sure how much money you're going to get. You can't be stopping and starting hiring and cutting and hiring and cutting. That kind of short-term cycles with no predictability is a recipe for disaster, and it wastes a lot of money. And so we need to get off of that. We have people in our government that understand that are working towards helping with that, Maggie, and we're not going to see cuts to communities. I don't believe this budget that's coming out next Thursday will be bad news for communities, particularly rural communities, because our tax base is so much smaller, and our revenue source is limited. And part of the problem with some of the grant programs is that you have to be really creative in writing those grants. As you know, you've got a round peg of need and you've got to pound it into a square hole of grant. And that takes some creative writing. And I think that grant writers probably have took creative writing courses in university.
One of the best programs that ever was developed, in my opinion, was the MSI. It was stable funding for municipalities. It gave us flexibility to make our own decisions. And I still believe that municipal governments have the best value in their dollar that they can produce. So we need to make sure that we fight for MSI funding, Molly, and we need to make sure that the operational and the capital is added in that into the future. There's no doubt that municipalities would be struggling a lot more than they are right now if it hadn't been for that program coming forward. And I know it's coming up pretty quick here at the end of the first use of the MSI, but we need to make sure that we fight to keep that on.
Gentleman here.
Gary, he's throwing praise on Prentice, and I'd like to believe he's a good man. But some of the things he's done, like he's issued how many million to that golf course in Kananaskis? Now, I don't know whether that's a real priority, but I do know there's some high-level conservatives that are running the thing. Because Getty and them put up all of them in, and they're still there.
So the question is?
Well, like, he keeps saying how good he is, but that's some of the things that I just can't buy into.
Okay, fair enough.
Is that directed at me or is it us?
Both, yeah. We'll let you both have a crack at her. Thanks, Brent.
I've listened to Premier Prentice half a dozen times. I do believe he's a man of honor and respect, and that's the reason that I'm running here.
Oh, I'm not saying he's not.
Are there problems? Are there issues? Again, absolutely. There are things that should be changed. And I don't know the circumstances to the correct question you're asking, but I do believe we've got the right man leading the ship right now.
So do I, or you wouldn't have got your blood boiling a while ago. Here's the numbers. The specific question you've asked, the specific answer is the damage that was done to that golf course will be paid, the repairs will be paid for 90% by insurance. So if I was going to offer you $9 if you gave me $1, would you make that deal?
Well, I'd have to see what part it comes from.
Really? All right.
Because you might not be with that party tomorrow.
Well, you just never know, do you? Anyway, I'm committed to principles, and they're the same principles. Our government has the same principles that you have in terms of value for your money. We won't spend $1 that we don't need to if we can avoid it. But that's still part of that process of getting the bureaucracy under control, shrinking the bureaucracy to a manageable size. You've got too much government, more government than we can afford. I think we'd agree on that. And the Premier agrees on that, and he's working towards that. But it's going to happen phased in over time to reduce the impact on the economy and also to be gentler to the people involved, quite frankly. Now, we need to admit and understand that many of the civil servants that work for us are very sincere, and they're very dedicated and very committed, and the waste bothers them too. If I were a minister, I would be going to the front lines and talking to the people that are delivering the services and asking them, how far up the ladder do you go before you start getting double talk and baffle gab? And that's where I start doing the trimming.
Mayor Cronin.
Okay, I have one more question. The gentleman reminded me that we also have a golf course, but we have a creek running through the golf course. And when we had the flooding, we had serious damage. 13 different points on that creek have been very badly damaged, and it's now affecting the golf course. Here's the issue. We have been approved for funding, remedial funding, through insurance, if you want to call it that way. But there is oversubscribed issues with the funding, so we can't access it right now. Yet we need to do the repairs. It's $2 million worth of it.
We'll open this to both people. Perfect. Jump on up, Brian. Looks like you're ready.
I wish I could answer this better, but in all honesty, without knowing the circumstances, it's kind of hard to give a good answer to this. Obviously, if you have insurance on it, it should be the insurance company that is the first one coming up to get the cash.
It's a provincial issue.
It's provincial funding?
It's flood remediation.
Through the provincial funding. So the resiliency fund that was just announced? Yeah, it was oversubscribed, and I believe there's a deadline that was at the end of the month, but it's now been moved into April or May before we can do it.
There's no more money.
And that's going to be a common answer in the next few years as we deal with this budget. There's only so much money to go around.
The Reeve of the MD of Tabor and I have talked about this because we're also working together on some issues. Similarly, we had people that agreed and understood from the Environment Department that came and for the first time they saw the picture that we were trying to address. And the Reeve referenced that earlier tonight. And it's oversubscribed. We were promised the money for that project, and it's oversubscribed. I believe our government will make good on that. I will certainly be asking them to, because why should somebody that's equally as entitled to assistance as you and as the residents in the south part of the Tabor MD that I'm specifically referring to be deprived of that support just because T is near the end of the alphabet? C is near the top of the alphabet. How come Cardston didn't get it first? You know, how do you judge these things? The government will be fair. You'll be treated fairly. Nobody will, whose needs are legitimate, as yours are with regards to the repairs that are needed for the golf course, or as are needed in the MD of Tabor. Those will be met. But it may take longer than we'd like because the money isn't there and it's going to have to be funded. But the Premier believes in investment in capital assets, and he believes that it's all right to borrow prudently for appropriate and necessary capital projects. These kinds of repairs are important to a small community like ours because it brings in tourists and it's a quality of life issue. It won't be ignored. It just may not happen as soon as you'd like.
Well, let's all pray that we don't have another flood because we have a bridge there that might stand to not be there.
Well, is there any connection between paying your tithing and getting too much rain? And maybe we need to look at that.
Graham?
This might be a question that pushes a couple of boundaries, but you've both spoken to the need for long-term sustainable and flexible funding for municipalities. This might be especially applicable in view of the downloading of responsibility from the province over the past 50 years or so. What are your positions on granting municipalities additional revenue raising powers apart from property taxes, so that less round grant applications are submitted to square grant programs?
Very, very good question, and it's a recurring issue. It needs to be addressed. There's a revenue shortfall. There's a revenue shortfall because we've been spending money in the wrong places. We've been spending more money on things than we should have. Properly managed, this government can meet the needs, the legitimate needs at all levels. There is huge waste, as you know, as you sense, and you see it. Again, it's going to take time to correct that, to get that ship back on track. It will happen by degree. It's difficult. It's not easy. There are no simple solutions. They're simple to put down on paper, but the execution is what it's all about. Plans are easy to create, and governments are famous for making plans, but we don't always execute so well because we often rely on people who have had little experience signing the front of a check. In other words, that have risked their own capital to create jobs, to realize dreams. We need people in government that have done that have run projects, that have employed hundreds of people, and know what it takes to do that right. I've been there, I've done that. I think that's why the Premier wants me back, because he knows what it's going to take to put the government on the right track. It's going to take a concerted effort, and it's going to take as many small C conservative voices as he can get, and I'm one of them.
I'm going to have a hard time arguing with stable funding for municipalities as a Reeve. I agree 100%. It would be nice to have some stable funding. The irony that I'm seeing today, in one hand we're getting beat up on spending too much, and in the next hand we need to spend more. Where is that balance? That's what we need to try to find, ladies and gentlemen. Where is the balance between spending on this hand? We need more money for this, but you need to balance that budget. We got some tough times coming up. We got to start spending responsible. I believe municipalities are one of the best channels that we can put funding to, because they get the best bang out of that dollar.
We got a gentleman right here. Perfect.
Thank you. Jason, for those who don't know me. Two-part question for both of you. The first part, and we talked about a lot of the government this, the government that, and I see this. I want to focus it down. I need to be a little more narrow. So Gary, what do you think has been your most significant contribution to the government and to the province as a whole since you've been serving? And second of all, what do you think will be your most beneficial contribution going forward? Same for you as well.
Well, you've addressed it to me, you've asked us both, and since I answered first last time, I'll allow Brian to answer it. And my answer will only take 10 seconds.
One of the things that I've brought to government is certainly through some of my work with committees, drainage committees. A lot of them are issues that other people didn't want to attack. We had a lot of problems with drainage, irrigations in municipalities, bunting horns. Sometimes you just need the ability to sit down and talk and come up with where there's a common consensus. At the end of the day, there always is. One of my greatest achievements, I believe, is with agriculture and with the rural small towns. That's where my heart is, that's where I've grown up, and that's where I'd like to see. Moving forward, again, it is on the same thing. I think our potential in agriculture has not been met within this southern area. The cropping, the value added that we could be doing has been forgotten about. Oil and energy has kind of been taking the spotlight, and agriculture has been forgotten about. We need to eat. At the end of the day, we may argue about the price of fuel, but if we don't have food, that's a lot larger priority for us. The world is relying on us as an exporting country. Like I say, we're going to be one of 6 coming here real quick. So we need to try to do as much value adding as we can.
Very good question. The short answer.
9 seconds.
The short answer, Allison Redford is gone. Jim Prentice is here. Now, can I elaborate? All right. My biggest contribution going forward, working with our premier, is to be part of his team to help him create the proper systems. I know you've heard a lot about systems tonight, because when you're not getting the results you want, you ask yourself 2 questions. Is it the people or is it the system? Usually, in almost all cases, it's the system. So we need to overhaul the system. The Premier gets that. He understands it. Some of you that have been MLAs understand it because you've seen it and been frustrated by it. A minister told me once that the hardest part of doing his job was getting his assistants to do what he asked them to do. They'd either say no to his face, or they'd say yes and wouldn't do it, or they'd say yes and go behind his back and undercut him. So it's getting the right people in the right seats on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. I'd put in place performance agreements. Let me just quickly tell you what that is. Mutually agreed upon desired results. Clear understanding of expectations. If you and your wife have that going, your marriage is going to succeed. Second is understanding what the resources are. Third is what the guidelines are. Fourth is accountability. How are you going to report your stewardship? Fifth is consequences. We need consequences. We need proper ways to measure the performance of the people that are working for us, that are getting tax dollars, and hold them accountable. I'll help them do that.
Gentleman up here in the front.
I would like to know if Premier Prentice is going to be like Ralph Klein. It's this way or no way. I did not vote for Mr. Klein. I wasn't going to vote PC this time. I was going to be Wild Rose, but I can't vote for them either now. Is he going to be a dictator?
Excellent question, and it kind of goes to the question of the earlier fellow who was so angry at me for leaving, and that's such a compliment, I have to tell you that. The difference in the spirit and the feeling, the tenor of caucus meetings now compared to what they were 6 months ago, a year ago, is like night and day. We had a premier whose attitude was, I'm told by an insider, if your opinion isn't the same as my opinion, you have no business being in this caucus. Now we have a premier who says, constituents first. In fact, this is what he told us. He said, your first responsibility as MLAs is to your constituents. Your second responsibility is to the province. Your third loyalty is to the party. That's Jim Prentice. That's the man that he is. That's the man we've got as a premier. That's powerful. When I sit in those caucus meetings and I see the notes that he takes, and everybody is free to speak, and he won't end that meeting, or he won't allow a vote to be held until everybody who wants to speak on it has a chance to speak. And you know who some of the most vocal people in that caucus are? The crossers. And they listen. And you can't believe the compliments we get from the other caucus members who've been in there so long. You're succinct, you get to the point, you're organized, you're thoughtful. And when we speak, the premier takes notes and he asks questions. And the most articulate person with the breadth and depth in that caucus, who's not a cabinet minister, is Danielle Smith. She's making a real contribution to improving the quality of our life in our country and the quality of our government. Disinterested, but I need some more water. Speak loudly and I'll go up here and fill my.
It's a good question. One of the promises that have been made is open and accountable. And to me, that's important. You need to have input into what the decisions are being made. And the information that I'm getting back from the ministers and MLAs, that is what's happening. They're sitting down, they're talking, they're listening, and they come up with a common consensus. That's what I bring to a council table. I go around the table and I let everybody talk, and at the end of the day, you make the decision based on what everybody said. Ironically, lots of times when you walk into a room and you think you know the answer, it turns out that it's not after you listen to the different opinions. And that's the way we need to run a province.
Mark?
Okay, thanks. I keep hearing this transparency and accountability. I want to know what that means to you, because I know what it means to me. And I see some transparency, I don't see the accountability. What are we going to do different, or what do you want to do different, or push through to show that they're truly going to be accountable? Both, please.
I'm going to start out with some advice I was given from a gentleman sitting right here in the room. Don't forget your ratepayers. Don't forget to listen to the people that have elected you. Don't lose track as you get in Edmonton. Sometimes you seem to get under the dome and you get this dome fever, and you think that everything is evolving around there. At the end of the day, you're there to serve the people that are right here. You need to make sure that you don't ever lose that connection to the grassroots people that have voted you in. And that's why I think it's important, and that's a commitment I'll make, is to keep a connection with all our councils and boards within the division. They're the grassroots people. They're the people that know what's going on within their areas. So it's important for me to make sure that the town councils and municipal councils, irrigation boards, and First Nations have an open door policy to let me know what's going on. That to me is accountability. I'm there to represent you, not the other way around.
Good question, Mark. When I took you and your lovely wife to dinner the other night with Sheila and I, that wasn't expensed. That was out of my pocket. I've never expensed a meal for myself. And when I've made a donation like you bought at the silent auction, that money's come out of our pocket. I think the transparency is that you can look and see what my expenses are. You can go online and find that out. And you can do that with the other ministers too. There is room for improvement, obviously, and we didn't see transparency. We saw a lot of behind closed door decisions made by cabinet without discussion. When Premier Lougheed started out, he made sure that every cabinet minister knew more about that ministry than anybody that worked for him. He required them to drill down and know that. When you're playing musical ministers, they don't get a chance to really learn their job. I believe the Premier Prentice will leave ministers there long enough to understand it. And he certainly gets the big picture, Mark. And he's going to make sure that the public knows what's going on. Accountability, I made a note there. You can't manage what you don't measure. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. You know that. The company you work for does a great job of measuring and monitoring performance. And we get so hung up on methods. And sometimes the Public Service Union is wrapped up in the method of delivering service to us. But that's a monopoly. And without competition, you rarely get quality service. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication to make it happen. So we need to introduce competition wherever we can. We need to hold people accountable, we need to measure their performance, and let's agree on the results that we need, and let's work within guidelines on the methods. We ought to have a little more flexibility on the methods. The government needs that, and the unions aren't letting us have it. But we need to get it back.
We're just going to go for about another 5 minutes here, and then we'll let them do their summaries. But we'll get you in just a minute, Mayor. We'll go to Dave here.
The government has known for years of baby boom, but I can't see that they've really planned for it. Their way of compensating for it is to increase the retirement age. And that isn't a solution. And as a result, we now have seniors that are in acute care beds, like you mentioned earlier. And that isn't a solution to a baby boom, because it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And I'll address that to both of you.
Me first this time? I almost feel like I knew what questions were going to be asked tonight, because these are things that we've been talking about. So I guess that really should reassure you that the government is in tune with the issues. Let me give you an example that I think you'll all find very satisfying, and you particularly, because of the question you asked. Acute care beds are the least efficient, least cost-effective way of providing long-term care. We're allowing people in acute care beds to remain in those acute care beds who should be in long-term beds to remain there because the bed isn't available in the facility that they particularly like. In Lethbridge, for example, it might be on the north side, and nobody that lives on the south side ever wants to die on the north side. They'd die before they'd go to the north side. So you understand what's going on there. The minister's aware of this, Minister Mandel's aware of this, and that's being changed. The Premier, recognizing the issue with providing more longer-term care beds and even specific long-term care beds, took the responsibility out of infrastructure as it pertained to seniors and put it into Jeff Johnson's new ministry, seniors ministry. Now, he didn't add to the number of ministries, he combined some others. So we still only have 17 cabinet ministers. And then he took the responsibility from healthcare, AHS, that pertained to seniors and their facilities, and put that into the seniors ministry. So with a budget for 1,500 long-term or extended care beds and facilities, because of this combining, removing those silos, Jeff Johnson announced that he'll be able to build over 2,600 beds. That's about a 70% efficiency that's been created by just doing the intelligent business-like thing. So rest assured that you'll be able to rest well.
And I'd just like to echo the 2,600 bed announcement that was recently made there. So it is a start. Is it enough? I don't know. But there has been significant beds added, certainly to the Cardston Tabor Warner. I know they're working in Milk River on one right now. Tabor's just had a recent expansion. It's a huge undertaking to get these all built, because you're right, the baby boomers are at the age where they're in need of the service. So it's a work in progress, and yes, I wish we could do more, but again, we have budget restraints.
And watch tomorrow, there'll be an announcement in Raymond that's been long awaited that addresses that very issue. I'll be there to make it with your MP.
Mayor Cronin.
The question I have is regarding communication. As you know, in the Tabor area, some businesses are really have difficulty locating in that area because of the broadband issue. They cannot upload fast enough the way things are going in this province. So what is your position regarding improving communication in rural Alberta?
We get it in the government, and we understand that the vitality of rural Alberta in this technological age requires high-speed internet, and it's coming, and it will come. There are so many jobs that can be done now wherever you can live and wherever you want to live and have access to broadband, and we're going to make sure that access is there, Maggie.
This is one of my big concerns too, to be honest with you, Maggie. We've put the money in to put high-speed internet into all our schools and libraries. The province has already paid that bill, and yet it seemed to end there. Why can we not expand on that? Why can we not provide that service out further? In today's day and age, the internet is crucial in order for businesses to survive or to come in. That's one of the first things they look at. So in order for our small communities, in order for our rural communities to grow, we need to make sure that we have decent internet access to it. And it's there. It's just a matter of accessing it, taking advantage to what we've already paid for.
The trick is to access it at a cost that is affordable.
Yeah, exactly. Again, we've already put the money in to build this. Why can't we make this a lot more affordable?
We'll go one more question, and then we'll let them do their summaries, and then if you guys want to talk to the guys afterwards, then feel free. No offense, Maggie, we've had quite a few. Yeah, is there anybody else that has a question that hasn't addressed the floor yet? Dr. Strang?
In Cardston, we used to have quite a good level of health care at every level, and recently, some 4 or 6 years ago or so, the decision was made to build the Good Samaritans facility, which is a designated assisted living facility, which means that the level of health care is somewhat lower than in the nursing home situation, and to close our nursing home. We now have a deficit. What do you think could be done for that?
Either you gentlemen want to jump up first, or do I get to pick a lucky guy?
Well, did I not answer last?
We can go with Brian, sure.
I'm sorry if I didn't.
No, that's okay.
That's a good question. We've got similar, it's not the area that has the same issues. We've got similar issue in Tabor with the exact same things happening. And we met with the minister asking, how do we correct this? How do we make these, we got to be able to figure out a way to get a better service out of some of these assisted living facilities, get more bang for a buck.
Agreed that this is an issue and will continue to be an issue until we get the budget under control, until we get our spending under control, and until we can correctly direct funding the funds that are available to the correct destinations where they're actually needed. I'm encouraged by the efforts and actions of Minister Johnson. I'm encouraged by the directions that the Premier has given him. I'm encouraged by the work that I see Minister Stephen Mandel doing to rectify some of the egregious errors that have occurred, the misallocations that have occurred as a result of central planning. As I said last night, I just imagine these central planners scratching their heads in some ivory towered office in Edmonton saying, and Alberta Health Services saying to themselves, whining, how come we can't get central planning to work? It worked so well in the USSR. You know, that's ironic, right? It didn't work. Central planning doesn't work. As has been mentioned a number of times tonight, the funding spent closest to the taxpayer is the most efficiently spent money, because you're accountable to your neighbor. If your neighbor sees you wasting his money in your job as mayor, he's going to let you know, isn't he? Yeah, there he goes. He's your neighbor. Who's your neighbor? And so we need to restore more responsibility back at the local level. And Richard Starkey's rural healthcare group has identified that, and we're seeing some changes that have been announced. There's more that needs to be done, and it will be done. Can't be done soon enough, but it will be done.
So for now, thanks for all the questions from the floor, guys. Really good questions for these guys. We're going to give each of them 3 minutes. They can do a quick summary. We'll start off with Mr. Bikman, and then Brian can go last. And then after he's done, I'll just go back over for the latecomers where the polls will be and what time they'll be at. So turn the mic back over to Gary.
Thank you, Mike. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I want to thank you, Mike, for doing a great job, and for everybody else that's taken time to come here. So the question is, who do you vote for? This is a job interview. We're applying for a job. I already have the job. I'm applying to be allowed to keep doing the job that you've spent money training me to do or helping me learn to do. I think I've learned it pretty well. Is there more to learn? Of course there is. You never stop learning. If you do, why, you're probably dead, or you ought to be. So the question is, who do you vote for? I think that the tough times that we're in right now require somebody that's had experience doing it, because I think that the learning curve, the time that it will take for that learning curve may be time lost. I think that the kind of person in caucus, the kind of associates that the Premier wants and needs, that you as constituents in Cardston, Tabor, Warner need, is somebody that has experience, doing the kinds of things that I've been doing in my private life as well as in public service. I've been a mayor and a councillor. I've seen that side of things. And now I've been at your MLA for the past 3 years. And I think that the results speak for themselves. I've got one more term left in me. I'm 71 years old. I believe my experience, education, understanding, motivation, and accomplishments justify your faith. So does the Premier. It's why he's asked you to re-elect me and send me back to him. And over the next 4 years, as I work with Jim Prentice to resolve the challenges and get our province off the royalty roller coaster, I'll stay close to my opponent to help him prepare and learn the duties of an MLA. Then I'll campaign hard for him in 2020. He'll be older and wiser, and by then, better prepared for the job. Thanks.
Again, thanks for the question. It's truly appreciated, and I truly enjoy this to find out what the issues are out there. There's one important piece of information that I want to share. I made my decision to seek the candidacy of the Cardston-Tabor-Warner riding prior to the recent floor crossing. I attended the PC AGM in November, and that's after that I decided to seek the candidacy here. Premier Jim Prentice put a challenge out to us to help rebuild a party. New people, new beginnings, building a party starting with trust and respect. There's some hard decisions that need to be made in this coming years. I'll be the first to admit that. I'm willing to do that. I'm prepared to make a commitment of 8 to 10 years to work for this riding if elected. I do believe we need to put some changes in place to move forward. I will promote our small towns and our rural communities. As I drive through this constituency, what I see is vast farmland, vast ranch land, and small communities that rely on that agriculture and ranch land to survive. It's important that we put our commitment back into our small communities to make sure they can survive. And one of the ways of doing that is going to value add our cattle and our grain in order to get these small communities up and thriving. Yes, we do have issues that still need to be worked on. Rural ambulance is a continuing issue for us, and we need to work on that. Rural internet access, again, is an issue that we need to work on. Milk River and Cardston have concerns with their hospital services and buildings. We need to make sure that that's addressed. Barnwell and McGrath both have some great ideas for school utilization, but we need the support of our provincial government to make that move forward. I don't have answers to all the questions. I just have a promise to you that I'll work with you and try to come up with some solutions. I make one promise to you here today, and that is that I will represent this constituency from one end to another. It is a huge constituency, but I make the commitment that I'll work with our councils, our irrigation districts, and our First Nations to work together and find the solutions to our concerns. Thank you for coming out today, and God bless.
So yeah, big hand out to both the guys for coming out and doing their time tonight. Big hand for you guys coming out and asking your questions and coming out to support and find out and get informed. So again, just a quick summary of what we talked about at the beginning, for those of you who missed it or may have been a little bit behind. In order to vote for either of these two nominees, you need to be a member of the PC party. It costs $10 to become a member, and you can see either of these gentlemen to sign up on that. The advance poll will be March 26th in Raymond at the high school from 2 till 7. And then the nomination vote is the 28th of March from 9 a.m. till 5. In Tabor, it can be found at the Parkside Manor. Cardston's here at the Tanner Center. Raymond will be at the high school. McGrath is at the town office. Milk River's at the Heritage Hall. And if you'd like to follow these two guys, you can catch them tomorrow in Raymond. And on the 24th, they'll be in Milk River at the town hall. And on the 25th, they'll be in the Sterling Community Center. So please feel free to ask them any other questions that you may have, get to know them. They both have some information that you guys can grab on your way through. And thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, you can do it. Yeah. Kind of new with this stuff. Well, I did.
Thanks. On that sheet, can I just grab it? Yes.